Good afternoon. How are you? Well, I'm back on our roads. Hello, Dirt Road Gang. Here I am. I'm out here. And it's easier today because according to Jefferson, the temperature is 54 and it feels comfortable like that. And the humidity's 33%. And the winds are at 17. And when I just turned this corner here, the wind was blowing, but it almost felt tropical, but it's not. There are a couple of things to talk about, but I decided I don't want to be a conduit for the stuff that brings us down. So I have a couple of observations. The first one is on how small our nation is when you consider one of the terrible effects. For example, right now in Oklahoma, they're having wild fires. And in Texas, they have dust storms. And most of us perhaps have read or thought about the dust storms in America in the 20s and 30s because of bad management practices with drought. And the dust storms spread across the entire country. The dust that went up in the air from these farms and spread from coast to coast. Now, if you noticed yesterday, when you looked at your car, there was stuff all over the car. And it was like spotted. And you might think it was dirt or dust. And it was. The question is, where did it come from overnight? And what it really came from was a muddy rain, evocative of the dust storms that I just mentioned, and that went up into the jet stream. It was carried by the wind from Arkansas and Texas, in my case, to Northern Virginia. That's how connected we are, each of us, to how we handle the nature that can give us so much, but can also hurt us a great deal for not managing and maintaining our respect for nature. So yesterday, I walked on a pathway that was next to a canal, not used for many years, with locks along the way for boats to travel there. And that was one of their means of dealing with commerce using the waterways. And some took the water from those waterways and used them with mills in various places. So here we are today. And since the Industrial Revolution, really, the things we've done to assault our environment around us is causing us now to pay the price. So that's one of our concerns. But I thought about the different things that are going on, and those of us who don't even want to listen to Trump, and I do it only because I'm a political obsessive and I have limited my listening, and sometimes it's only the comics at night that I listen to who actually replay what they've said. And the comics at night seem to have a more honest story about what's going on, who's doing whom. Also, it is a tried and true method of monarchists, dictators, to try to make a chaos in the soul, if you will. Up is down, down is up. Even things like the tariffs, which are probably a function of a gang that doesn't know straight, but also does know that the chaos of what they're doing gets people uneasy and unsettled and concerned about what's going to happen. And that's legitimate. And so, whether it's about tariffs or funds for schools, my old Columbia or other schools. People trying to put Bibles in every classroom. People fired and then brought back to work. Trump wondering why we don't have only geniuses from Harvard or MIT. At the same time, they're challenging the existence of these institutions. Chaos. Chaos in every direction. And so what we have to do is take a vacation in the sense of administering to ourselves enough information to be cognizant of what's going on around us and look for opportunities to make a difference and not be overwhelmed, as some are, by what's going on. And when somebody seems to want to make a gesture in support of the people and resisting this myopic crew that seeks to suppress in every direction, including its own, that we tell them. So, for example, there was a thing in which it wasn't meant to be funny, but members of Congress were laughing and taking stances as if they were fighting. It was silly. If you're going to have a demonstration, do pay attention to the place and the sound and the background. Everything's part of the message. When I was younger, Marshall McLuhan and his theory about the medium is the message. It hasn't changed. It's true. And there was a reprint of his book, and they, instead of saying message, they said the medium is the massage. And he left it that way because it was an accidental expression of something that was true, or a Freudian slip, if you will. Because how we receive the message massages the message and makes it important or not. Trump counts on the darkness inhabiting his supporters to push on against women, persons of color, people with dissonant affectional preferences, as they see it. And these people, I know some say, oh, you can reform anybody. It's just not true. All you have to do is take a glance at history. These people who care nothing at all are kind of like the metaphorical zombies who do not understand the origin of our nation, what its value is, and that if there's anything that we want, perhaps more than anything else, it's freedom. Now we could tack on other things. We got to breathe air, we have to eat, we have to have housing, all of these things. But freedom is a first premise. And being able to speak freely is a significant way to maintain and protect that freedom. I've always said that freedom of speech is a prepositional freedom. That is to say, you have freedom of speech. But do you have freedom after speech? Because that's the test. And what kind of speech are we prepared to protect? Well, the most important speech to protect is robust. We have to be able, using the First Amendment, there's a reason it's the First Amendment to the Constitution. It's because we have to speak to the multivariate ways that Bannon and Trump and Musk clog up our lives with these things, taking advantage of our affection for one another, of our belief in principles that they would destroy, and that in the bargain they would compromise our freedom. So I just thought I would wander through a couple of ideas that it's easy to lose sight of if you just are overcome by the force of the many crazed, prejudicial, unproductive, forceful alienation, slanders, lies. You can't be overcome by that. And I've tried to recreate in my own mind how I thought about prior chapters in the sorry history of people like Trump. And some may say there's nobody like Trump, but there is. I mean, Nixon was his own version. Ford made a bad deal that cost him a term at the White House, as it should have. Even Nixon should have been dealt more harshly than was the case. And then the people who lie. McNamara lied about the war. Nixon did. These people just roll on down the road. What was Reagan about? He told stories like Trump does about poor people using food stamps to get alcohol to drink instead of feed. You know, this is the problem with coverage, that it doesn't act critically. Of course, there are the Bush family members. The first Bush had Iran-Contra, as did Reagan. The second Bush had Iraq. The first term of Trump was what it was, and people wanted any insurance they could get that they would not have Trump a second time. But the forces, probably some large fraction of which had to do with lies and infinite amounts of money to spend to do what McLuhan would talk about. The medium, the lie. As a student of Latin in high school, when we read the Aeneas in Latin, there was a term for how rumor is spent and reputation is affected. And the two words were fama rumpit, F-A-M-A-R-U-M-P-I-T. Now, word spreading. These are the words rumput that you would use to describe a forest fire traveling across the land, like happened in California in real life. Well, we have that phenomenon now in the Trump administration, fama rumpit. Without any recourse to feeling or caring, these people drink the soup of devilry of non-human, inhumane conduct, and they just press it down and press it down. And we have to do what we do with other things. I'm fascinated by some of the videos I see, YouTube videos, in which they sell it, I think presuming we want to know the worst that's happening to people that we celebrate or are interested in. So it's always, this actor, for example, you don't know the terrible things that happened in his life. Well, I'm at a point where I think, having seen enough of that profession, that people who act suffer a great deal to get started. And then the uncertainty, variation of what we're going through, is pretty demanding and hurtful. And so we have to realize that in life, terrible things do happen, and we do what we can to deal with them and to move on, not always with great success. So what we have to do is put this in a perspective that this is a challenge to us as life is, and to do nothing is to predict the result. That is, we'll be complete and total victims. But to push back in whatever small or large way we can makes a difference. Because it is not preordained they will succeed, given the terrible misadventures, political and otherwise, of those who claimed to be our benefactors and democratic leaders who failed entirely to be anything like that. So those are a couple of thoughts I have back here on my my road in our cathedral of trees. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.